Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes. Yes! We get it a little earlier this week, which is fun. Here's Bryan. Bryan, I want to talk about two different Jets, okay? I want to talk about the NHL Jets first. Best 15-game start in NHL history at 14-1. This has been incredible. Though the team, if you look at it on paper, mostly the same as last year. Should we be giving GM Kevin Cheveldayoff a little more credit?
Yeah, I absolutely believe he deserves a lot of credit. And I think you can go even further up the chain, Jay, to ownership, because they have been so committed to Kevin Cheveldayoff the whole time, ever since they returned to Winnipeg. This is the only GM they've had. And there have been calls for his job in the past because at times he's been labeled as maybe too conservative. Last year at the trade deadline, they went all in. They gave up a lot of assets to get guys like Toffoli and Monahan. And we saw how they flamed out in the playoffs, and maybe there was some concern about their future based on what they did last year at the trade deadline. But Mark Chipman, the ownership out there in Winnipeg, has been consistent. We want consistency in the front office, and that is Mark Cheveldayoff. And obviously, you look at what he's been able to do in terms of making sure that he rights the ship and making sure that this train doesn't get off track when there have been some monumental movements in the past. Paul Maurice left this team. And I remember thinking at that point, what's going to happen here? Like, Maurice felt like he was the guy that was steadying things. He was kind of the face of the franchise. He leaves. Rick Bowness comes in. It's all good. No playoff success, but regular season success. Rick Bowness decides to retire. They decided to hire from within. Scott O'Neill comes in. Look how well he's done. Consistency within the organization. And when you look at how they've handled either the faces of their organization in terms of Connor Hellebuck, in terms of Mark Scheifele, getting those contracts done a year ago, I thought that was really shrewd work by Cheveldayoff. And quite frankly, I didn't see it coming. I remember at the time thinking there's no way Hellebuck's going to return. Scheifele will finally want maybe to restart and go somewhere else and try to win somewhere else. He got both of them signed on what are very team-friendly deals. I mean, with Shesterkin looking for 11.5 per year, 12.5 per year, Hellebuck at 8.5 might be the best deal in hockey right now. And Mark Scheifele is a true, legitimate number one at $8.5 million per as well. It's just incredibly tidy work there. And I also have so much time and respect for the way Cheveldayoff has decided to move off very good young players who didn't want to be there anymore. And he didn't flinch. Right? It began with Patrick Laine. They invested a second overall pick with him. He was going to be the man in Winnipeg. Didn't work. You got to go. Pierre-Luc Dubois comes in. PLD doesn't want to be here. See you later. They didn't buckle. They didn't freak out. He said, I'll make a deal with the Kings, and I'm going to make my team better. And that's exactly what he did, bringing in guys like Gabe Vilardi and Iafallo and Kupari, all of which are playing and factoring in to this start to the season. So I have a lot of time for that front office, the way they've been consistent, the way they've been patient, and the way they've bought in and sold Winnipeg. Sold the team, the culture, the market. Everyone clearly should be puffing their chest out right now when it comes to this Jets team. But I think the GM, Kevin Cheveldayoff, he might be puffing his chest out more than anybody else at this point.
Let's talk about a Jets team that isn't doing so hot now. It is the New York Jets. And, Bryan, you were absolutely correct last week when you said they were done. They got blown out by the Cardinals on Sunday. FanDuel actually has a novelty prop bet. Will Aaron Rodgers retire before the start of 2025 free agency? And actually, the odds heavily favor no. But do you think the way the last two seasons have gone for Aaron Rodgers, this is eventually going to drive this guy out of the league finally?
Yes, I do think there's a very good chance that could be the case. I mean, 2 years in New York is an eternity with either team, Jets or Giants. It doesn't matter. Pick whichever one you choose. If you are affiliated with a pro football team in the city of New York, it is going to suck the soul out of you. And I think that's what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, and I think we're already seeing it. Let's not forget how he got to a point where he even wanted to take on this endeavor of trying to win as a New York Jet. It was an ayahuasca retreat, Jay. The guy was on an ayahuasca retreat and decided, you know what? I'll take on New York. I'll take on the Jets. And look how that played out. I think he's going to blame that for when eventually he does retire, or at least one out of New York. He'll say, it wasn't actually me. It was the ayahuasca retreat, and I need to go back, and I need to maybe rethink things, because it's a mess down there. That team cannot get it done. They don't have the offensive capabilities. They certainly don't have the defensive capabilities, but it's deeper than that. The coaching isn't good enough. The management isn't good enough, and Woody Johnson, the owner, has no idea what he's doing. So I understand where FanDuel is going with this. He's a prideful guy. Any all-time great player has an ego. Aaron Rodgers is no different. But I think a large part of why he wanted out of Green Bay, and I'm kidding about the ayahuasca stuff, and he wanted to go to New York, was he wanted to prove the Packers wrong. He wanted to prove that Jordan Love wasn't the answer, that he still had something left in the tank. And I think 2 years into his tenure in New York, he's realizing, actually, the Packers were right. And the New York Jets it's not going to work for him. So I wouldn't be shocked if anything happened with this guy. And I think it actually would be a pretty sound bet. You're getting, evidently, some pretty good odds on the idea of this guy pulling the chute basically right when the season ends, because it's going to get ugly. And I think it'll get uglier considering how bad it's already been for Aaron Rodgers in New York.
And speaking of ugly, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, it's pretty clear Mike McCarthy will very likely not return as head coach next season, which is leading you, Bryan Hayes, to wonder whether or not Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, has his sights set on a certain future Hall of Fame head coach who happens to be unemployed right now, but working for several different broadcast avenues, Mr. Bill Belichick. Would Jerry cede the control that he would need to cede, Bryan, in order to lure Belichick to the Lone Star State and the Cowboys?
He absolutely should do that, Jay, but I don't see it happening. He will not do it. This guy is absolutely obsessed with being the face of the Cowboys, the voice of the Cowboys. He's playing a video game down there. We talked about it last week. Barry Trotz down in Nashville admitted some of those moves the Preds made in the offseason, it was a fantasy. It was a video game. That's the story of Jerry Jones. Everything's about fantasy. Everything's about drama. Everything's about being a soap opera. He can't wait to do TV interviews, radio interviews. Now he's talking about whether or not the sun is appropriately situated at AT&T Stadium down there in Dallas. He can't get away from it. And I'm sorry, I just can't see Bill Belichick accepting that. Belichick will have options, I believe that, if he wants to. Like you said, he's doing every media outlet on earth right now, so he may not want to return to football. But if I'm running the Cowboys, if I'm Jerry Jones, if I'm in his circle, I'm saying, you got to step aside, Jerry. It's been 30 years. It hasn't worked. It's a disaster now. Bring Belichick in. Let him take over the whole operation. Let him try to get Dak Prescott right, CeeDee Lamb right, that offensive line right, turn that defense over, special teams, hire a new coach, even if it's not him. Maybe he is the coach. That's what I would do. But I don't see it happening, Jay, and I don't think I'm alone. I think most people fully expect Jerry Jones will move on from McCarthy, although that's not even a guarantee because you never know with Jones.
Yep.
But he probably moves on from McCarthy, and who knows who he's going to hire. But whoever he does hire, that coach will be working for Jerry Jones, the GM, the president, the owner. Jones isn't going anywhere for Belichick or anybody else. So I think that would be the right move from a football standpoint. From a drama standpoint, Jerry Jones simply will not accept it.
Here's what I will accept. The fact that Harvey's has been serving up delicious burgers to Canadians for 65 years, and the fact that this guy, Bryan Hayes, has been serving up the hot takes since 1983.
Hot Takes is presented by Harvey's. Customize your burger and get it delivered from our app to your door. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.